Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. WISP gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? WISP is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
It's tourney time, and with FanDuel's Dog of the Day, you can get a daily profit boost during the College Conference Championships to bet on any underdog. So get ready to celebrate some upsets.
No one saw that coming, except for me, baby!
21 plus in present in select states. Opt-in required. Minimum plus 100 odds required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, we're back with My Uncle's Escaped Alcatraz. We're doing a Friday episode, a Good Friday episode today. Unfortunately, we've been very busy working on a lot of Alcatraz-related stuff, which hopefully we'll have some amazing announcements for you soon. But we do have one announcement that I'll let Ken or Mike talk about, and they've posted on the Alcatraz Facebook page, and we'll be promoting it up until that happens, up until the event. But there's something interesting happen up at Alcatraz coming June 12th to 14th. So guys, what's going on up there?
Mike, you tell them the good news.
Okay, well, it started back about a year ago when our book came out. It was last May, a little bit less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to get the book into their gift shop. And Ken was very dubious of that result because, for years and years and years, their policy or their kind of the official line was that the three drowned, and it's an amazing escape. They're very respectful of what they did. If you go to Alcatraz today, we've talked about this before. If you go to the cells of John and Clarence, primarily, they've dressed it up as though they just left. It looks like there's inmates still living there. Whereas you look at the other cells, they're just basically stripped down to nothing, and some have less than nothing. They're just four walls and a ceiling. So obviously that's a huge draw for people who want to go to the island to see where they were. And the holes in the back of the cell are still there. And so there's obviously huge interest in John Clarence and Frank Morris and the escape. And so, but if you talk to the parks people, and most of the books and resource information is they more or less drowned. They didn't make it. It was a good try, but they failed. And of course, our book says something very different, that they did make it, and which is
the complete opposite.
The basis of this podcast. And so, much to our surprise, when we submitted our book, Ken didn't think it was going to happen. Well, they did accept the book. And it's on the bookstore shelves. And actually, I think it was either a friend or a relative of Ken's went and visited there, took a picture of him standing with the book in front of the bookshelf, and you can see it in the background. So there's proof that it's actually there. And so if you go there, you can buy the book at the island. And then what we also wanted to do was we wanted to do an author event. And so for a number of months, we've been reaching out to them, asking them if that's a possibility. And Ken said he'd be willing to fly out to Alcatraz to make this happen. And a few months ago, we were finally put in contact with sort of their PR person for the island who sets these things up. And he said, yes, we want to have you on at Alcatraz. And it would be best if we did it surrounding the anniversary of the escape. So that's why we're having it in June, because the escape was June 11th, which this year is a Wednesday. And so we're going to be there actually Thursday, Friday, Saturday for 3 days. They're going to set us up at it's looking like at this point, they're going to have us in the dining hall for presentations, talking to people, answering questions. We'll do a little PowerPoint, and then the book will be carried in the bookstore. And so we'll go to the bookstore from time to time and do book signings, and again, talking with people. And they're going to do a big promotional campaign around this. So we're thrilled that we're going to have this great opportunity.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. Maybe we can do an episode of the podcast from there.
Well, and then we found out today that the National Park Service is going to carry the post on their website and also promote us for this event that's going to be coming up in June.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay, well, we'll be there. And who knows? Maybe we'll be able to. We'll talk to this guy. Maybe we can do a quick episode up there from one of the cells.
That would be great. Yeah, Ken's always wanted to do a podcast from John and Clarence's cell. Yeah,
that would be cool. But yeah, no, that's exciting stuff. I think it seems like the planets are aligning for Alcatraz and your uncles and the book and now the podcast, and it must be a huge acknowledgement for you guys to be kind of kept out of the Alcatraz club, and your uncles broke out of the prison. Now you're breaking it.
Yeah, I'll have to tell you the story. I have a neighbor who his grandson came to visit him a few months back, and he was so interested in the Alcatraz story. I gave him one of my books and signed it, and gave him one of my T-shirts that I had created years ago. And this past couple of weeks ago, he went out to Alcatraz with his mom and dad. And when he came back, he called his granddad and told him to tell me. He said, "Dad, Granddad, I went out there, but they got it all wrong." That's nothing what they said matched up to the book. I wanted to tell them, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I'm hopefully they're going to be making some amendments to their little tour soon.
Totally agree.
But yeah, that's awesome. That's good stuff. So it falls in line with what we want to talk about today, because we want to talk about the book. We've been talking about everything that's in the book and all the stories and files, FBI files, and why they don't release them, and if they do release them, why are they redacted, and why is the government still holding on to this narrative of them not making it, when obviously we have documentation and we have pretty darn good proof that they made it out, and they more than likely lived out their lives in South America. But one of the things is, we're doing another project with you guys with that. And so Cindy and I have been doing a really kind of deep dive into your book and really kind of literally using it as the research, so because you have all the research in the book. It's like a one-stop shopping. So it's you don't have to go anywhere else. That book is so well sourced and cited that, it's the one thing I realized while doing this exercise of trying to boil down the book into a smaller version, literally almost into 20 pages. And so wanted to talk a little bit about what that process was like for both of you. I mean, because you guys are a dynamic duo. You have someone, Ken, who is basically has been the family source and the authentic source for this story. But then you came in, Mike. And then when you convinced Ken to write this book, and we can talk a little bit about how you conned him into that. And then
blackmail. It was pure blackmail.
Pure blackmail. That you had to kind of look at it from an outsider's viewpoint, not knowing a whole lot about what Ken's family stories were, and you had to blend both. And that's the one thing I thought you did really well, both of you, is you blended both Ken's knowledge in his head and his family stories and family background with, photographs and all this stuff like that. And then you had to go out and just kind of do a academic drill down of looking for files and newspaper articles and all the stuff that you had to do. So kind of give us a ballpark idea of what that process was like.
So, well, I can speak for me. Really and truly, the book kind of started out as a screenplay that I wrote. And if you ever read the screenplay, it follows a lot like the book. And I think that's what Mike and I, we took that screenplay, we added more to it. Or when I say added more to it, he took the stories that I had in my head and things that I have heard all my life, and my aunts and uncles that had shared with me, and some of the research that I had done at that point. And Mike said, let's take this let's take this screenplay and let's open it up, because there's way more there than what you had written down so far. And I'm gonna be honest with you, writing this was my very first book I've ever written in my life. And it took me a while to really wrap my head around how to write and how to take things that are inside of my head and what I was thinking and how I wanted my uncles to be portrayed, how I wanted people to see them, because it was so important to me that people saw them as real people and not some wanted poster in a post office somewhere, or on the FBI's most wanted, or the only story they ever had from them was what Clint Eastwood shared. And so it was really important that I made sure people understood that, one, they were someone's sons. They had mom and dads. They had brothers and sisters, and they had girlfriends who cared for them. And, they were not bad people. They really were not, especially compared to people today. Some of the things you read in the newspaper today, I mean, they were very, very lightweight when it came to being criminals. And so I wanted people to see another side of them. And as we wrote this story, it came out, and it came out in a way that I don't think it could have ever come out if Mike had not helped me do it. So, kudos to Mike.
There you go. Yeah, no, definitely. So Mike, what was your process like? And then when, it's like one of those things is I'm sure you did, like we do sometimes when we're always trying to get projects off the ground, and, so many of them kind of just don't go for lack of a better, for a variety of reasons. But, when you finally got the yes from him, it was like, great. Now, the good news is he said, yes, so we can do this. The bad news is that now I got to write the book. Now I got to do the work. It's because it's a daunting task, writing a book.
Yes, it is. So this is not my first book. I've actually been a published author for a number of years before I met Ken. I've written fiction and nonfiction. And I had actually stopped writing books. And the reason I did that was I could write a story, I could find a publisher for it, get it out there. It was the selling of the book that was always my Achilles heel. Trying to generate interest, trying to market it. I mean, publishers do a little bit for you, but it's really on the writer's shoulders. It's not like you say, okay, here's your manuscript, go sell my book and just send me my royalty check twice a year. It's way more than that. And so after a number of books that I thought were going to be more well received by the public didn't happen, I thought, I'm just kind of done with this. And I gave it a good shot. I got some books out there. I was very proud of what I did. And I was like, hey, I accomplished my goal and I did it. I'm going to start shifting towards screenplays now, because if I'm able to sell a screenplay, it's the production company, it's the studios that do all the marketing and the selling. It's to try to promote it to get the audience to show up, or if it's on television, just promote it on TV and newspapers and so forth. So that took that element out for me. And then I meet Ken during this time. And so when I introduced myself, I saw him on, when he did the documentary on the History Channel back in 2015. And I was, we've talked about this a number of times. I was very intrigued with the story, having grown up in the Bay Area, knew a lot about Alcatraz, or at least I thought I did. I knew the main stories, not the nitty gritty stuff that Ken introduced me to. And I wanted to be a part of that. And that's why when I introduced myself and he said that he had already written a screenplay, I said, well, I have some experience in that because I had done that myself, and was trying to encourage them, don't submit it to anybody unless it's really, really ready. If it's not polished, if it's not good to go, they're going to pass every time, because they have so many others to choose from, and they're not going to work with people that are still developing the material. And after some convincing, he did finally send it to me, and I looked at it, and I was actually, I thought, wow, this is better than I was expecting, because he had never done this before. And saw a lot of the stories that he referenced about his Uncle Man and John and Clarence and other members of the family, because he told a lot of family stories in his screenplay, because he wanted to do, it was going to be 3 screenplays, the before Alcatraz, Alcatraz, and after Alcatraz. And the story that he wrote was the before Alcatraz story, so it was the brothers growing up. So, I mean, I got a good taste of what that was, what their lives were like for that in screenplay form. And so we were focusing on trying to get this either made into a film or a television show of some level that talked about his uncles, because the one thing that Ken wanted to do was he wanted to focus on getting people to know his uncles. He wasn't interested in doing another documentary, another show like History Channel. He'd already done that. He wanted them to know his uncles and what their lives were like growing up, and
And I have to say, that's the thing that hooked Cindy and I when we started reading the book.
I was just about to say that.
We had a cursory knowledge of the Alcatraz story,
but they were they were just faceless people. Like, we didn't know anything about them. All we knew were bank robbers. I didn't even know it was a toy gun. So for me, it was like I got to know these people and then actually liked them, and I wanted them to escape. So it became like I was on the journey with them. And I think that's really what reeled us in from the get-go, was just the family background, but also like the emotional connection that you guys put in there. It's so much research. There's so much source material, all that stuff, but it could have been boring, but it's not. It's a great tale. It's a great saga. It's just, you're just in it.
Yeah. And I think that's what you did, Mike and Ken, is that you gave people an emotional payoff to kind of root for these guys. And what I thought was really interesting is I remember reading it the first time, but I saw it again. That advice that Whitey Bulger gave, that told you, Ken, that he gave to the brothers, and said, it was like this long quote where basically if you're going to escape, you're out there, you got to just count on never seeing your family again. You got to cut off everybody. You got to isolate yourself from the world. You have like that. And they didn't follow his advice because because of that, it just showed what a strong family bond they had and a connection, and what type of people they were, how selfless they were, in addition to like putting themselves constantly in the crosshairs by, sending birthday cards, Christmas cards, whether or not they were jumping over the border down in Mexico and Texas, and to see people, to find out information about the family, showing up at their parents' funerals, and all the stuff that they were doing. They totally went against what Whitey told them to do.
They did. And, Whitey didn't take his own advice himself. I mean, he definitely slipped up a couple of times when he shouldn't have. But, it's one of those pieces of advice that if they had followed through with it and had done what he had said, it's very possible that Alfred would still be alive, or would not have died in prison. He wouldn't be alive today. He would have been older than them. But I think that pretty much was the part that they probably regretted the most, was reaching out to Alfred, because they really cared about their brother. They were really like the Three Musketeers, according to Uncle Man, and they did everything together. And now John and Clarence is out, on the run in Mexico. They wanted Alfred to be with them, and they reach out to him, and his desire to want to go join with them, I believe, is what ultimately caused his life.
Absolutely.
That's probably something that Clarence and John had to live with the rest of their life.
Oh no, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think you guys illustrate that really well in the book, and you can and because you get to know them so well before that, that happens, and the ramp up. Because the escape is, it's an amazing story. It's an amazing, thing that happened, and the ingenuity and the genius that they did in order to craft that escape in such a short period of time. Granted, they had a lot of help, but still to pull it off. But that's just such a, it's kind of like it's part of the story, but it's the apex part. But the bookend is the getting to know them as they were kids growing up, and seeing how their brains were formed and how they learned all that, the stuff that they did that would later pay dividends when they became incarcerated is just, I don't think you like I said, you can't, and like I said, I always go back to the Escape from Alcatraz movie. I mean, you go back to, Shawshank Redemption, which is basically that escape is just, the whole method of that is just, a complete, homage to your uncles, but, in that thing, the Timothy Robbins character, it took him I think 25 years to get out, These guys did it, I think, in 25 months?
Well, they had help.
Yeah, that was what was kind of crazy about their escape was, there was multiple escapes out of Alcatraz and from other prisons, but most of the escapes, especially with Alcatraz outside of theirs, it almost kind of looked like it was like the spur of the moment. Like, oh, okay, here's an opportunity. Let's take it. Let's run for the water. Or, someone thinks, oh, I can take some clothes and dress up like an army. Maybe a couple of days, maybe a week or so. But this plan was in motion for months. And for it to stay that quiet, and so many other prisoners knew about it, and no one ever leaked anything to any guard. No one ever shared anything. It was just totally amazing that they pulled this off with the level of ingenuity that even the FBI recognized. They even put it in the FBI that when they looked at the the periscope and the homemade flashlight and all the tools and the life jacket and the boat, they were just blown away that these prisoners had the ability to take their time and do it the right way. And that's the reason why they escaped and was successful. They did it the right way.
Yeah. I want to get back to you, Mike, because I know we didn't finish what I wanted to ask you. So about your process, because when you're doing something like this, basically you're using Ken's screenplay almost as an outline, I would imagine, to start with. Is that how you operated with it?
That was sort of the beginning of the kind of the formation of the story, the structure of the story. And one of the things that I was saying before was that Ken was getting approached from time to time from other producers, other networks, saying, "Hey, I saw your show on History Channel. I want to do something with you about that." And Ken was like, "I'm not interested in that because I've done it, and that's not going where I want to go. We're telling your story, not my story." And so we were trying to create our own project, and we got close a few times. Some production companies, we said, "Yeah, we want to tell the story your way," and signed us, and we were trying to get it produced, and they never did. And after several years of trying, because Ken and I had been talking off and on about working on a book, because then he would have complete control of the information that he wanted to share with everybody. And that he had also been collecting photographs, documents, personal accounts with his uncles and people who knew them inside and outside the family. So the raw material was there. It just hadn't been really, crafted yet into a narrative. And when it seemed apparent that the shows that we wanted to do were not going to happen, then it was like, for me, it was like, I guess I have a book to write. I'm jumping. It's like the story from Godfather 3. Every time I get out, they pull me back in, kind of thing. And that's what happened to me. So it's like, okay, and if we're going to do it, then we have to do it right, because we're making a lot of claims in the book that nobody else is saying, and in many cases, we're going the opposite of what they're saying. That the major narrative is, like I said, it's amazing they escaped, but something happened in the water and they died and never to be seen again. And that's the end of the story. And we're saying, no, something did happen after they escaped. They did make it. But then we can't just say, well, this is what we believe, because that's not proof. That's just our personal opinion. And we're going to have to document everything that we're claiming from their early years all the way through the South America part of the story. And so then we had to sit down and like, okay, what's the material that we actually have? What are the pictures that we have? What are the family stories that you have? The personal accounts? What are, we have the FBI report, we have newspaper accounts, we have people's recollections, personal recollections, guards and former inmates. Just you have to get all these things together and start crafting the story based on what you have, not what you think you have. And that's what you mentioned earlier about how that we include a lot of source information in the book, that it's not just us saying these things, but it's like, here's the evidence that we have that gives us the foundation on which to say this. It gives us the gravitas to say this is what actually happened. And then we create a narrative. And one of the things that Ken was very particular about with the book was when, for example, when we started with the first chapter actually starts with them, not the way it ends up in the book, where it's sort of a forensic look at the escape, from a distance. As a lot of nonfiction historical based material, you're doing it kind of like from 1,000 feet up, looking down and sort of describing what happened. And that's how the first chapter was initially written. And Ken said, I don't want that. I want to be right there with them. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know what they're saying. I want to know what they're feeling as they're going through their life experiences. And that changed the whole trajectory of the book. And everything after that became that mode of storytelling that we're right there with them. And I think that's Cindy, especially, you've talked about how you really I got to know these guys. I was right there with them. And that was what Ken's desire was. And so that gave me the direction that I needed to start as we worked on the chapters together of how to craft them.
Yeah.
You did a great job. And I've said this over and over. I mean, this is a movie, and we will sell it as a movie.
If not something else.
It is a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a journey. It's an epic. It's a saga. It's one of the world's biggest mysteries. It's captivated an audience internationally around the world. And like you said, there's been dozens of people who have escaped Alcatraz. Why is it that these two men have so much controversy swirling around them, so much mystery around it, and it's just people can't stop talking about it?
Because they got away.
60 years later, because they got away, because they survived, not just because they got away. They survived. And that's the thing. That's what also is interesting to me. Like, why so many people are like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Oh, that photo is not real. Oh, even when you have the proof. I mean, how frustrating has that been for you guys?
Well, it's been really frustrating for me. Well, I think frustrating, I use it as a debate tool, because when I first found that photo, I'll be honest with you, no one really believed me when I said, that's my two uncles. I was just looking at it as an amateur, comparing it against other photos of John and Clarence. I could see it. And, I've told people who have debated me before and said, well, that's not them in that photo. And I always just say, listen, don't believe me. I'm an amateur, but believe the 5 professionals who have looked at that photo and have analyzed it and have come back. The last one would being a 99.7% match. That is John England. And to this day, I can't understand when I first got into a debate, I won't say an argument, a debate with Art Roderick. When we did that show, he is the one who hired Michael Street. I didn't know who Michael Street was. The production company told Art to go hire someone to look at that photo and see if it really is legit. And Art goes out and hires or gets Michael Street, who is teaching at the U.S. Marshals School at that time. And everybody's seen Michael Street on the podcast. He tells you to this day, that is John England. And why in the world people still want to say that it's not, I have no clue.
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation with Mike this week because we were talking about some other things that we're working on related to Alcatraz. And because he said, he goes, one of the things that happens, he goes, that, he almost has to be so stoic and so kind of like unemotional about when he's doing these things, because all the work that people give them, there's an emotional bias that comes to it that when they bring it to them, because these people want this to be this person, whether it's identifying a lost relative or anything for whatever he does. He goes, there's always a bias that people bring into it. And that's one of the things he says, with this, he goes, there's no, I don't have any emotional bias to whether it is or isn't. And he goes, I just have to go by my process and what matches. And that's where, and he goes, and when it, the numbers don't lie, the analysis doesn't lie. And he says, so I'm not biased one way or the other. So the fact that.
Hey, lovely. This is Laura Richards, host of the Crime Analyst podcast. The human body is an amazing thing. It can repair and grow in ways that are still pushing the limits of what science can explain, even in 2025. But as you age, your body's natural healing and building processes slow down. It's totally normal, but that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do about it. A collagen supplement from Ancient Nutrition can help you feel and look your best. Ancient Nutrition's mission is to create high-quality supplements that combine the best of ancient wisdom and modern science. Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplement contains 10 types of collagen from 10 real food-based sources. This formula is powered by clinically studied ingredients that promotes fat loss and healthy weight management, as well as building lean muscle. Collagen can help reduce joint discomfort and improve the look and growth of your skin, hair, and nails. Plus, Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean is delicious and easy to work into your daily routine by mixing it into your morning coffee, matcha, or your favorite smoothie. I'm telling you, I can't wait to add Ancient Nutrition's multi-collagen advanced lean supplement into my morning routine. I'm literally counting down the days until it arrives. Right now, Ancient Nutrition is offering 25% off your first order when you go to ancientnutrition.com/truecrime. That's ancientnutrition.com/truecrime for 25% off your first order. ancientnutrition.com/truecrime.
You got someone like that doing that, and then it hits 98.7 or whatever. That 99.7. So like nothing's in these analyses. They never say 100%. So it's like that's basically 100%. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, and it's when I was talking to someone, I was debating them, and it really made me stop and think about, okay, how close of a percentage does the TSA use? And so I went out and did some research, and when you go to the airport today and you hand them your passport and you stand in front of that camera and it takes the picture on your passport and it compares it to the face that it's looking at that you're standing in front of, it doesn't do 100% match either.
Mm-hmm.
Anything in between 85% and 99%, they will let you board that plane.
Yeah.
Anything below 85%, then they have to have a physical person look at you to see if it matches the passport. Well, John came back with a 99.7, which means he could have boarded any plane in the world as John England, and he would have matched.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know what else you could say. I mean, if you don't trust, facial recognition software, then how are we trusting the TSA right now to let someone on a plane? Yeah.
And they, and it's so funny because it's like a lot of times when I go through the Clear or the TSA scan, now it's like they have a whole new system now. It's just like, it's, literally, you don't even show them your ticket anymore. You just give them your license. You stand in front of this machine. It literally, within a second, it takes your picture. It either says yay or nay very quickly, like literally instantaneous. And like, sometimes I'll have my glasses on. Sometimes I have a baseball hat on. Sometimes, I'm like not clean shaven, or like your face is all puffy because you wake up in the morning and it's like, it still recognizes it, and then facial recognition, like, when they caught the gentleman, the young guy who shot and killed the healthcare exec, they got him, all it was showing was this and this, it was like that. And they were able to identify him just from his eyes and his eyebrows.
It dumbfounds me, people who, you can look at all of the evidence that Mike and I have pulled together. It isn't something that is just like, oh, well, this is something we wish happened. I mean, everything that we took either came out of a newspaper, the FBI reports, out of firsthand accounts of the event, either from Whitey Bulger or from family members. And then we take, items like what Fred Breezy took down, all those photos that he took in Brazil. When we went down to Brazil with Josh Gates, we were able to find just about every single bit of those photos. Oh, yeah. Except, of course, the woman. We weren't able to find her, but we did find the farm. We found the little small town in the middle of nowhere in the country that 3 American men show up at in the late 60s. So, I mean, none of this is things that me and Mike just, pulled out of our hat. I mean, we're giving you, pieces of evidence. And I've always said to people that want to debate me on this, and I would love anybody who's watching this podcast today, or I guess they'll be watching it tomorrow. If you're skeptical, I dare you to come on to this podcast. You can contact Rob and Cindy, and I will debate you I'll let you give any piece of information and evidence that you think you have that can go against anything that we've said. I mean, I'll back up anything we've ever done in front of anyone, and I'll debate you and let's see who has the best evidence.
Like I said, when I told Art, I said I would put, your guys' book up and put up in a mock trial. And you pick a bunch of jury that know nothing about it, and then just let it fly. I know he smiled because it's so funny because he just I can tell he's torn, and Art,
if you're watching this, we will be on the island June the 12th through the 14th, and I promise you, if you want to come out, we'll set up a table, we'll have a debate, and we'll have the public who is around there be the jury. You present anything that you've got you want to present. We'll present what we have, and let's see what they come back.
I like you, Ken. I like how you throw down, man.
I just want to add one more thing, and that several months ago, we had that gentleman from Brazil who reached out to us that worked in the John Deere plant outside of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and he evidently watched the 2015 documentary that Ken did with History Channel. And saw it about a year later. I think it was 2016 that he saw it. And he's thinking hey, there's a guy I work with that looks a lot like John. And he eventually got that photo to us that we had analyzed by Michael Streed. And if I remember correctly, the 75 photo, I think there were 5 points of comparison that he used on John's face because it was taken from a distance. It's kind of grainy. And the new photo that we have of this gentleman who is probably in his 60s or older at the time, more elderly, I think it was 15 points of comparison. Mm-hmm. And so he sees this photo of John from the mid 70s. And of course, the earlier photos of John when he was incarcerated and the mugshots that they had included in the show. And he sees this guy that he's been working with, and he says, I think that might be John Anglin. That he sees a recognition. And then, of course, when we had it analyzed, Michael Street said that these 15 points of comparison, they all match. They all match with each other. And then when he did the overlay of, partials over, different parts of the face, how they lined up so perfectly that you think it was just one picture. It's not two pictures, blended.
The overlay is amazing. And then also the scar is the other thing that's really crazy too.
So you can just tell by looking, and we posted that photo on our Facebook page, a number of weeks ago, and people are like, "That's John. I can see it. That's clearly John." In their amateur looking at the picture and kind of comparing the two in their minds, or maybe even bringing them up on their computers and looking at the two. That's John Anglin. It's clearly John Anglin. Yeah. In his older years. So. Again, we have another photo from Brazil that's saying the exact same thing. And even some of the stories that he was telling us kind of point towards, that being John Anglin as well. One of them specifically being that he was married at the time. And he said that there was things about this guy's past that he hadn't told his wife, that he was being very secretive about, things that happened years before. Well, that doesn't mean it's, John Anglin escaping from Alcatraz, but it again lends itself to, why is he holding back information from his wife that he didn't want her to know, unless there was something that can get him into trouble or the family into trouble.
Yeah. And then he also sent another photograph, like a kind of like almost a waist up of him, of the same person. standing in front of the house that he lived in, and we have those images too. And even from that angle, it looks like John.
Yeah. The other thing too is that the I say a subdivision, the complex that he lived in, which was a gated community, and his car that he was driving indicated that he had money. So, we do know, according to Fred Breezy, that John and Clarence, I'm assuming Frank Morris, there was another American man. Fred Breezy never said his name. All he said was there was another American man with them. Mm-hmm. But they owned a farm. They owned a large farm. They had people that worked for them. They owned a lot of, farming equipment. So if they did at some point in time sell all of that, I'm sure they came into a lot of money. And so to have that kind of money would kind of indicate how he was able to have the kind of house that he had and drive the kind of cars that he drove. And, I'm sure it's once we get down there, because we are going down there, come hell or high water, I'm going. and I want to go in that house. I want to go in the house. There are probably other items that he has in his possession. And we now know where he's buried at. I would love to, at some point in time, see if we can get some DNA from him. We could definitely approach the family, and if they're willing to do it, that pretty much solve the case too, right there.
Yeah, and then like some people will be like, the skeptic would be say, well, how are they able to make money down there and stuff like that? These guys broke out of a prison island, and and before that, they figured out how to make money as just doing things that they did. Growing the weed for Mickey Cohen. If I had to bank on anybody kind of survival skills in a foreign country and figure out how, the fact that they had farming skills as well. They grew up on a farm. I'm sure they made a lot of money doing what they did.
Well, and Mickey Cohen, Fred Breezy said in the 92 recording to Ken's family that there were three things waiting for them after the escape. There were clothes, fake IDs, and money that Mickey Cohen had given them. Now, he doesn't say how much money was given to him, but there was money given to all three. So they go down to Brazil. And as far as we know, all three of them stayed together for a number of years. And then Frank Morris kind of disappears. We don't really know what happened to him and when he left. But for a time, he was with them for several years that we think we know when they were in Montero Lobato in the 70s. Because when Ken and I did the documentary with Josh, there was a story of three Americans hiding in the mountains, which we were able to go to, and he found those items on the top of the mountain, primarily the Lincoln penny that shows that Americans were clearly there. Mm-hmm. And, what three Americans are hiding in the middle of nowhere in Brazil and in the 70s, unless it's the three that we're looking for. And so, they can pull their money together and buy a farm, which Fred Breezy said they did. There was an English gentleman, according to Fred Breezy, whose wife died either of a snake bite or a spider bite. He had a farm. When she dies, he goes back to England and they take over his farm.
Yeah.
And since he's leaving for England, he's probably not selling it for a lot of money. He probably I just want to get rid of it and go back to my home country. So they probably got a good deal with it. They have their money together and they start building the farm. And like Ken said, they had tractors and other farm equipment. They had approximately 20 employees that worked for them. They would sell their goods in the market. So they had a means of generating income. And then of course they had the land. And then if they eventually sold the land, which they seem to have, in their later years, then you're going to make a lot of money just from owning the land. And Fred said it was a very large farm.
Yeah. The American dollar, I would imagine back then went a long way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A long way. And the fact that they actually bought it from an English speaking person, they found someone who they could actually negotiate with.
It's very convenient. It's someone leaving the country. So there's no question of that person saying anything to anybody.
Exactly.
And if that area truly is the area where the farm is, which we really believe it is. If you look at it today, part of that farm is now a really nice subdivision. So whoever purchased that from whoever they purchased it from, developed it into a really nice subdivision. There is also some really nice farm that's there that's raising cattle for the Brazilian people, some high end type cattle. So if they did sell that land, they sold it to people who came in and probably paid a pretty good price for it. Especially if they already had most of it set up and ready to go. So I can see them walking away and making a pretty good living from it.
And one of the other parts of the story, when we were talking to the gentleman in Monteiro Lobato who was recounting the story when he was a little boy, that the Americans were hiding there for several months. They were, like I said, they were on top of this mountain that is above the town of Monteiro Lobato, and it's about a mile up, almost straight up. It's a very steep climb, and I had to stop a few times when we were climbing the mountain. I was winded.
I saw pictures. I saw pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, I was tired, and they didn't think I was going to make it, but I fought through it anyway.
Mike.
One of the things that he told us was that, like I said, they were there for several months, and there was a guy there that was he wasn't a deputized legal constable. Yeah, he was kind of like a local sheriff that the town just sort of collectively hired and said, "You're going to protect our town." It wasn't a legal thing. It was just this guy had some influence, and so he sort of was their protector. And so he went up to investigate, like, why are you guys here? And so they make an arrangement that we don't know what they said, but he was going to provide for them, give them provisions. He'd go up a couple times a week and give them food and probably some things for basic shelter so they can protect against the elements, because it rains there a lot. It's in the middle of a tropical rainforest, basically, being in Brazil. And so where did they get the money to pay this guy for several months that they're hiding out on the top of this mountain? Where did that come from?
Exactly. Well, that's, when we had Lenny DePaul, U.S. Marshal, he says that's where the 99% of the escapes, everyone knows how to get out of the, if they get out, I mean, they can, but what do they do after that? They always get caught, because there's not usually, unless they have some sort of ironclad plan for someone waiting for them outside, or a plan to get away from the prison, out of the country, they get caught all the time. And these guys.
And now we find out, reading through the FBI reports on Mickey Cohen, that he had a good friend who traveled multiple times down into Brazil and then would come back to Mickey. So as I was telling Mike, Mickey Cohen already had some type of contact with people in Brazil.
Of course.
I mean, it wasn't like, because I used to always kind of think, okay, well, I know he had contacts and he had a farm in Mexico, but it's very possible that he also had a farm in Brazil, and this might be the actual farm that they purchased. I mean, because according to the FBI files, they were tracking this individual that was traveling down into Brazil and then would come back and go straight to Mickey. So undoubtedly, he had some type of a relationship with someone down there. Yeah, and so now it kind of makes sense. Okay, well, if you're going to go down, because, if you're 3 American men and you're just going to fly into Brazil, I mean, what are you going to do? It's like, where do you go? Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, could you imagine yourself right now if you flew to China and you wanted to disappear into the Chinese wilderness? Where would you go? And what would you do? So it kind of makes sense that Mickey undoubtedly might have had something set up for them already there. And that's one of the reasons why they wound up there.
Well, and that one FBI document, which I think it's dated
it's
1963.
Crazy. Okay, I read that the other day, and we've talked about it. We've seen it before, but for some reason, when I was reading it the other day, it just it's hits you right here. It's like they wrote a document to the FBI files that says they were in Brazil.
Yes.
And they have names redacted out of people that helped them, and I'm like, I want to know.
So, how can you sit here and say this didn't happen? It's just insane. It's insane.
I'm telling you, I've said this multiple times. One day when we and I've asked Cash Patel again, if one day when we get the fully unredacted version of the FBI file, everything in there, we're going to find out that the FBI has always known.
Of course.
And
of
it's
course.
not going to be this big secret,
No.
that, oh, gosh, we didn't know they were down there.
No.
I've always known they were there.
No.
Yeah. The main reason why they waited so long to hand it over to the U.S. Marshal.
You're exactly right, because then you start thinking like, are there any other prison escapes ever in the history of prison escapes when the U.S. Marshals were around? Did they take 17 years to turn it over to the U.S. Marshals?
It would be like 17 hours.
17 years.
Like 17 hours.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And Lenny said, he goes, FBI, they don't find people. They're like investigators. He goes, they can't find anybody. He goes, they call us to find the people.
Can you imagine, you go into the U.S. Marshals who are charged to finding people, and you go to them and you go, okay, it's been they got a 17-year lead on you, but we want you to go find them. Are you serious? 17 years.
Yeah.
Before they ever get it.
All right. Well,
there's way more to this story than what we've even.
There's more. There's more that we don't know. There's more.
It's so deep. And like
actually, I was watching the news before we did the show, and they were talking about, several weeks ago, they unloaded, they finally opened up all the JFK files.
Mm-hmm.
People have been pouring over those. Well, today I was watching the news that they just released 10,000 pages of the RFK files, and they said they just found 50,000 more pages that they didn't know about, or rediscovered, I should say.
Wow.
That they're going to start, releasing as well. So now RFK's files are starting to get out there. So I'm hoping that they'll get to the Alcatraz files and release those.
Well, maybe we won't have enough people watching our podcast, but they'll reach out to their either senator or congressman or write Cash Patel and tell them we want the Alcatraz files unredacted released.
Starting
whatever other files are out there that we don't even know about.
Right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
There's so many.
I'm sure.
There is.
Come clean.
Come clean. Well, listen, we're really excited about the book event up at Alcatraz. Once again, for the audience, anybody who wants to, know about that, it's June 12th to June 14th, and it's going to be up there. Ken and Mike are going to be up there. We will more than likely be up there, and hopefully by that time we'll have some interesting news for you. All right, guys.
I like it.
All right,
guys.
See you next week.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.